Colin Crabbe was the kind of man who could spot a priceless vintage car under a pile of chicken wire in Paraguay and somehow drive it home. A flamboyant racing driver, Formula One team owner and classic car hunter with a taste for adventure and a knack for trouble, Colin lived life in the fast lane, sometimes literally. From smuggling D-type Jaguars out of Cuba to crashing out of races in style, his stories were as wild as you can imagine. I was lucky enough to interview Colin back in 2022, right here in our little village in Lincolnshire. With his sad passing earlier this year, it felt only right to bring that conversation back, this time as one extended episode. I think you'll find it funny, chaotic, moving, and full of Colin's unmistakable charm. He'll be sorely missed by his family, our community, and classic car lovers around the world. But what a ride he had. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. In today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Colin Crabbe. Colin is a Formula One team owner, a racing driver, and an eminent restorer and dealer of historic classic racing cars. In his book, The Thrill of the Chase, Colin takes us on an exciting journey right through from his childhood, then as captain in the Scott Guards, his motor racing career, and a life tracking down classic racing cars throughout the world. The book is full of fantastic stories, some of which Colin will tell us about today. I've just finished reading the book. It's a really, really good book with lots of fantastic stories. Hello and welcome to the show, Colin.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Well, the book is a story book, and it's a very truthful book. And I only really got sued by one person because he didn't like what I said about it. But when you're writing a book about your life, and in my case, the best part of 500 old cars collected from all over the world, it's very difficult to get your facts 100% right. And in this case, in one case, I got it wrong, and he threatened to sue me. So the book, sadly out of print, was hidden, large quantities of them, all over Great Britain, in case there was a seizure order on them. Luckily, that never came to it, and the man backed off, and it was all apologies and things. It shows you how jolly careful you've got to be when you write anything.
I bet you do, Colin, yeah. So, Colin, before we talk about your life with cars, could you just please tell us a little bit about your early life, your family, etc.?
We come from a whiskey distilling family.
Yeah.
And we've gone back, we can go back to 1750-ish.
Wow.
To the age, and then it's all blank. We were based in, naturally, not surprisingly, in Scotland, and in Dumfries. In fact, I've still got some of the coloured panes of glass from the original house, which was pulled down, built in 1855 and pulled down a bit over 100 years later. The distillery was in Leith, and I went to look at it the other day, and it's still called Crabbe's. So that was what the name of the whiskey was.
Yeah.
There was only two types of Crabbe in my day. There was good Crabbe and rather posh Crabbe, posh being considerably more expensive. So I've always drunk it. I won't now, because of course the new people who own it are producing a sort of whiskey and ginger beer mixed and things like this.
Yeah.
Still have the nerve to call it Crabbe. I find it sad, but anyway, that was part of my early life and probably gave me the capital to do what I have enjoyed doing for the last 75 years.
Yeah. And then you went to university?
I went to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Not very long, but I went there to learn a bit about geology and archaeology, which was my sort of specialised subject. Prior to that, I'd gone to school in Yorkshire, which I love to this day. I hated school, but I love Yorkshire. That was really where I got one of my great interests, which was going out one day on the moors and finding an absolutely perfect arrowhead. Neolithic, one thing led to another, and I've got now a jolly good collection of working flints from the Mesolithic age. So that was really how it all got going.
Yeah. And then you joined you went into the army?
I did indeed. I suppose where we could be classified as a military family. My grandfather, who I never knew, fought in Natal during the Boer War. Yeah. My father had a very good military career and was one of the very first people to cross into Germany in 1945. Oh, wow. I mean, to the extent I've actually got all the original documents with one marvellous two marvellous words in red called Get Hitler. And I think it's dated the 5th of May, 45.
Yeah, wow.
Hitler was dead, just about dead by then.
So these were the instructions for the army to get Hitler?
Those were it was more long-winded, but that was the general, that had been written in red. I found a lot of maps and things too, not very long ago, which I gave back to the Scots Guards, which was my regiment. And rather fun maps with sort of machine gun positions, dead German. It was all absolutely detailed. And this was perhaps 3 weeks earlier, going through the lowlands, going through the Netherlands on the way to Germany. Anyway, I joined the Scots Guards. I suppose I went through the school corps, which we all did, and hated again. Then I joined the Scots Guards. And I wasn't really mad keen on going in, but my father reckoned I should. So really not to annoy him, I went in, entered quite successfully, and I enjoyed 3 years of not doing very serious soldiering. We didn't do any fighting, which to me was rather important if you go into the army. Neither did I move out of England, which I thought was even sadder. I'd gone, one going to the army in those days, there were places you could go to Malaya, as it was then, or you could go to Canada, you could go to East Africa. There were a whole lot of places you could go to.
But you had to stay in England.
But I just stayed at Queen Elizabeth's barracks at Pirbright. So I did have one little story about that time, as I was already involved in buying old cars, and they were dirt cheap. And I had a 1952 Lagonda convertible, exactly the same as the Duke of Edinburgh had. Probably he had his new, I suspect. And I'd gone up to London to go and visit with my father to go and look at a new car, because my father was mad on cars.
So do you think it was your father's influence that got you interested in cars?
I think largely I took it over from him.
Yeah.
I remember being sort of going down, I think, called the Esk Strait in Aberdeen, and we got 100 out of his Bristol, which was going some, I'll tell you. We expected the thing to explode. But no, it was fun.
A Lagonda?
I had a Lagonda. And the Lagonda was had been to this party at a car dealership in London with my dear old dad. And I no doubt I was pissed. But on the way back to Pirbright, I'd forgotten about a roundabout, which I hit at 40 miles an hour.
Ah. And
I can remember this because there was a dog track underneath it. It must have been Sunbury-on-Thames, somewhere like that, I think. And you could see underneath the car, you could see where the dogs used to run. Well, of course, that caused immense excitement with the police. But as it so happened, I was breathalyzed and I was clear. And then I realised what had happened was the police then said, "Oh, well, you're based at Paraguay, come and give you a lift there." Oh, I said, "Well, thank you very much indeed. Any time." And I'd hit a roundabout, which in fact 3 police forces, if you like, had a third of it in their jurisdiction.
Oh, right.
So they came to see what was going on. And they were very nice to me. Which is very rare, because they're not normally very nice to me. But no, that was also, I think, my first motor crash. Yeah. But yes, I mean, I've had dozens of cars. My father obviously influenced me. When I was 21, I was given a Mini. Very much, it was a lovely Mini, divine Mini. It was also the first year of production.
So this would be...
1970 or 71, I think.
Right.
Or 60
or 61, yeah.
61, by everybody. And it was Cooper-esque, or it was Cooper, it was... Mr. Alexander Engineering had put a very demon engine in.
So for listeners that don't know a lot about cars and Cooper's is the sports version?
Oh, and how? This car had been sent especially to Cooper's for me. How fast it is by modern standards, one wouldn't sort of think about it. But it was very fast. One of the guards I had to do later on was Windsor Castle, out of Paraguay, where the battalion was stationed at the time. I mean, I used to get it down to a pretty good 12, 13 minutes to Windsor, which was breaking every rule in the book, I think.
We won't ask what.
But he taught me to drive. And he taught me to drive well, and he taught me to drive fast and safely. Yeah. And it's a story in the book, and I shan't go into it here, where I actually saw a ghost. You come across that bit yet?
You saw a ghost? I think I did, yes.
I saw a ghost. I went to stay with a friend of mine in Scotland, in the Mini. I first of all did spin the Mini, I remember that, and landed up facing a cow, which was staying with a friend of mine in Ayrshire. And it was a wonderfully spooky castle. It had an oubliette, which for those not in the know is a sort of bottle-shaped dungeon where you fed scraps at the end of a rope. Anyway, I enjoyed that. I had a lovely time there. And my friend, they lived there for hundreds of years, and said, "Don't be worried if we hear footsteps tonight." Well, I sort of expected somebody going to see your mother, isn't it? A ho-ho. And he said, no. I tell you, it's King James.
Really?
And King James comes and sees Mummy every few weeks, and this is the time when he comes. Well, I tell you, I love ghosts. And I've got some pretty ghostly stories I've had in the past. That was the nearest I've ever been to a ghost. Coming back to the castle one night, I saw a little bearded figure standing, looking out of a turret window. So I said at dinner, "Who's been dressing up? Who put a beard on?" Looked out of the window, and they all looked absolutely blank. And the window I looked at had been blocked off 100 years ago.
That's strange, isn't it?
So that is fact.
Yeah.
As long as you keep an eye on me, I'd be all right.
So when you were in the army and you'd started this sort of interest in cars, and you were starting to buy at that time, weren't you?
I started to buy really before then. I started to buy when I was at Edinburgh. And then you could buy a vintage Austin 7 for about a fiver. So I was buying little cars, Austins and things, as one does when you start collecting. And in those days, everything was dirt cheap, which is a very different story as to today. Anyway, my army career came to an end after 3 years, and I'd met up with a nice chap, and I said, "Well, you and I ought to start a garage together." And he said, "Okay, you pay for it, and I'll help you," with that sort of attitude.
Yeah.
At which point I went to Australia. A girlfriend of mine's parents said, would I like to go to Australia with them, which was wonderful. I did. And I spent 3 months in Australia, actually staying at a government house in Canberra, which was extremely comfortable and rather fun. And after that, I bought a car, not rented a car, and I think it was a Ford Consul or something. It was a Ford made in Australia.
Yeah.
They looked like the ones here, but they were a bit different. And I, by train and luck, found my way to Alice Springs. A lovely time looking at all the kangaroos and all things, wildlife. I'd go back and do that. I haven't done, nor will I now, but there was a lot I missed out on. And without the girlfriend, I wasn't allowed to take her.
Too far?
No, I think the parents had their eye on me.
Oh, I see.
Probably very rather mischievous. And ended up in Brisbane, spent 2 days. I went to Green Island, a lovely tropical island, lovely swimming, pretty girls. I mean, it was absolutely what was perfect.
Yeah.
Take the train back to Sydney, which was overnight, and I went in. There was a sleeper with a sort of anti-mosquito net over it. So I went to bed, got in a sleeper, and within 5 minutes I let out a squawk, the likes of which you've never heard. Because I looked up, and I had the light on, and there was an enormous spider about 6 inches from my nose. So I know what Australian spiders are, they can kill you.
It's interesting, isn't it? I've been to Australia, and I went about 6 years ago, and the whole wildlife just sounds different, doesn't it, because of all the different animals and creatures and insects.
Divine little baby kangaroos and what are those little bears called? I can't remember. What are the things that cling to trees?
Oh, what, koala bears? Yeah. So when you came back from Australia, that's the time you decided to start Antique Automobiles, was it?
Yes. It was while I was in Australia, I had that idea that I didn't quite want to start a business. I had no particular business. But then I was doing I was going to do vintage racing. I had a vintage racing.
Oh, so you'd started racing by then?
Yeah, but I hadn't actually done it.
Right.
I heard on the grapevine that post-war cars were now being accepted by the Vintage Club over here. By that I mean a Maserati 250F, a Ferrari, Formula One car, things which had never been allowed before. So what should I do? I go and find a 250F Maserati in Melbourne. So I buy it. £1,000, that really did clip.
I was going to say £1,000 in the early 60s, that was a lot of money.
It's worth probably $250,000 now.
Wow.
And I bought that. It was a car driven by the Australian champion Stan Jones, and he'd bought it from Stirling Moss. So we had lots of lovely pictures of the car with Moss driving it. And it had won the Australian Grand Prix on one occasion. On the next time, it had gone into a tree at the start. He's not good driving. So anyway, I arranged for that to come back. And then we set up this company called Antique Automobiles, which...
So this was back in England, was it?
This was back in England. Yeah. I had a little team of people which I built up over the next few years, really. And I was doing what other people did at the time, which was a small workshop, restored a car, charged so much an hour for other people. And that went on during the 1960s, I suppose. So having returned from Australia, I got hold of my friend Roger, and we went out and wondered where on earth we were going to start a business. And here was I in Lincolnshire, Roger in Lincolnshire, and I lived in Aberdeenshire. So there was kind of a problem in how one was going to get to and fro. And the deal I did was all typical Crabbe deal, that he would run it while I went to Aberdeenshire to shoot grouse.
Sounds like a fair exchange.
I thought it was a very fair exchange. That worked about a year. Then he got bored, I got bored. We weren't making any money. We survived, that's about all. Funnily enough, we landed an extraordinary contract to restore cars for Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how we got it, but we got it. And which meant we always had a car. Yeah. And one car was restored, a Mercedes man to come out and check it out, back it go, and another one would come the following week. So that was very good. So anyway, antique automobiles carried on, and I sold the company in 1983. I said I folded it. I didn't actually sell it to anybody, I kept it, but I just closed the garage doors, and we didn't do any more restorations. I got totally disillusioned with restoring cars. There were dozens of people starting little companies doing it, and you quite simply couldn't meet their prices, employing people. I was very lucky because I used to, half my staff would come from BRM, of course being just up the road in Bourne. Yeah. So I had very good mechanics because they were very badly paid, so I just gave them another 5 shillings an hour, and I got Cyril Atkins, head mechanic, came to me, and he became my head mechanic for a number of years. So anyway, there we are in the early 70s. What am I going to do? Well, I thought I'd go to America. Go and have a look at America. I like America. Went to America, found a few pretty good racing cars. I was really going to specialise in racing cars. And then I came back to England, and I decided South America was the place to go. And I was proved absolutely right, because I had a set of photographs of a Maserati and a Ferrari sort of in the jungle. Yeah. So I thought, work that out, because they were quite current cars. And you weren't, when a car's life is over, the season's over, and then it would probably be bought by some third world country who were going to run it in their own race, which is exactly what happened. They either went to Argentina or they went to Australia. They went to the sort of southern hemisphere. And so I went there. I spent quite a long time in Argentina, exploring more than playing with cars.
I mean, Colin, just to interrupt a second, the book obviously tells a lot of stories about some of the cars that you found. And this is in the days before the internet. How did you find out about these cars?
Well, really by chatting people up and finding ancient mechanics and people who could be involved with the cars.
Just networking generally?
It was just pure networking. Yeah. And, networking worked unbelievably well in the end.
You found some really interesting finds in Argentina.
Yes, my first visit to Argentina, which was 1976, was very interesting because, in fact, we arrived normally. I did wonder why there were so many people carrying machine guns around. I thought it was a bit wild country, and there were police vans with sirens going. Because I arrived in the middle of a revolution, which nobody told me about.
That's not the best timing, is it, Colin?
I was to do it again somewhere else, too. Where the story gets very twisted and rather nasty, actually. We might leave that bit out. But those were the days when the Argentines were caught throwing their prisoners out of aeroplanes. One way of getting rid of them. Bought cars in Argentina, bought probably a dozen cars in Argentina. And I bought a number of little baby Bugattis, which are also shown in the book. Yeah. And They went back to the workshop, got tarted up, and got sold
So
on.
the cars that you bought, they were then shipped back to the UK, well, back into the UK.
Shipped straight back to Baston and stripped.
Yeah.
Or sold complete. I mean, it's rather depending where you're going to make your most money. Did Matey want to restore it himself, or did he want me to restore it, or did he want somebody else to restore it, and the price was adjusted accordingly?
And how long would it take, say, I suppose it varies by car, but roughly how long would it take to restore a
Well,
car?
the sort of cars we had, it could take ages. You get stuck by one piece that you can't get. You have to fabricate.
So it could be a year or so.
Yeah, it could be actually.
Long time.
I think we had maximum, we were about 20 people. We had a top machinist. All the equipment I bought was absolute top whack, top notch. The latest, whatever it was. And so we had no excuse not of producing secondary work, and we didn't.
No.
That's the story of Mercedes coming on board.
So you had the best mechanics, the best equipment, and you gradually built your reputation up.
Then I got twitched. And I got excited with motor racing, and as red road cars had gone by, I'd bought a GTB Ferrari, which was a very good car, and then I bought a GTO for 800 quid, now worth millions. My wife Fiona said, "This is the most awful car you've ever bought," because it sort of, you had to put full left lock to turn right sort of thing. It was really old wreck. But still worth a great deal of money today, a huge amount of money. And anyway, that I bought two of those. Both. I mean, I'm very much the agent. I didn't keep anything.
Did you have any issues in terms of, making sure that they were authentic cars?
Oh, I know an authentic car when it's not. And you talk about forgeries, because there are a lot of forgeries around today, because it's worth forging a car if they're so valuable. It wasn't worth it in those days. And I might just go forward a few years. I sold one car to a German, and he sold it on to somebody else, and then the German bought it back, thinking it was worth £1 million. In fact, it was still worth about £200, which is what I'd paid for it. But I'd bought it in the United States early on in my career, I suppose around about 1970. Paid very little for it, and got a letter from Alfa Romeo to say this is a fake. That always helped. I still have it, the letter. And of course, that's all you needed, just sort of show to people, and then life proceeds. It was seen at Goodwood last year going very badly. I was pleased to see.
And so how do they? Is it all to do with the chassis number? Because I guess that could be forged as well.
Oh, you've got chassis numbers. You can see what old numbers were stuck on. You had to be very careful whether there'd be new numbers hammered on. I think we were very good. I don't actually think I had a single fake car in all the years. I had an awful lot of cars. I say I had over 100. I probably did. I don't know how many.
What you were doing at the time was quite unique.
Not doing what I was doing, which was exploring.
Yeah.
Which is what I loved doing.
Yeah.
Going, meeting Indians, going down jungle paths.
Wow.
Going to the Iguazu Falls, flying over the Andes.
So the exciting part for you was going to the places and meeting the people?
Yeah, largely.
Yeah.
And I think my name went round, and then people started offering me things, and that's really how the South American side worked.
Yeah. Must have been very exciting.
There were moments when it was extremely exciting. And I can think of various extremely exciting moments, which probably out of sync, but probably the most exciting thing I ever did was fly on Concorde.
Oh, wow.
which I was to do several times. I mean, you might ask how I got an enormous bottom like mine on the seat, because they were pretty tight. But I've just never forgotten it. It was just spectacular stuff. Later on, I went to Cuba. This is no racing. This is long after the racing over. And I went to Cuba, and I found 3 D-type Jaguars.
Sorry, D-type?
D-type.
D-type,
Le Mans type.
Yeah.
And I had a sort of notion they'd be there. They were there once upon a time. And Andrew White, I think it was, who wrote the book, the penultimate book on Jaguars, he came to see me, and we had a long talk, and we reckoned there could be a D-type out there. Anyway, so I applied for a visa to go to Cuba in 1980. Well, not many people go to Cuba then. It was total shut. No, there weren't tourists, there were none. 9 months later, I get a telephone call from the Cuban embassy. Please come and have your passport stamped. 9 months. So I was on the first available train from Peterborough and had the passport stamped. I mean, it's all quite exciting. You are leaving on Thursday. And this was Monday.
Oh, right. What, they decided when you could go?
Oh, yeah, that was all decided. Yeah. It was an extraordinary setup. And I bought a load of cars. They air freighted the whole bloody lot back.
No issues getting stuff back?
No issues. I thought there would be tremendous issues, but there weren't. There were no problems at all, because nobody had ever tried it before.
How were you perceived when you came into Cuba, landed at the airport? How did that feel?
I think they just accepted me for what I was. I had a visa, and that was good enough for them. I mean, we were put up in a hotel, no charge.
No charge?
It was called Havana Libre, the Free Havana. In fact, I think it was a Holiday Inn or something in its previous life. Went there, met an absolutely charming Australian who was exporting cigars. And we got talking, and I said, I think we better carry on our talking in the bedroom, because there were people taking interest in us. So up we went to my bedroom, where we consumed a bottle of rum, and said good night to him. We told each other filthy stories, because I reckoned we'd probably be somebody listening in.
Yeah.
And they were, because the following morning I came out of my bedroom, and there was a little man in a peaked hat waiting outside. Good morning, he said to me. Oh, but we love your stories, Mr. Crabbe. Oh, you are a wonderful storyteller. Have a good breakfast.
And did they leave you alone after that?
Oh, yes, no trouble at all.
That was a good tactic then, wasn't it?
I wasn't expecting it. That was the only thing I could think of saying.
And how long did you stay in Cuba for?
I had several trips to Cuba.
Yeah.
Probably 4. My last trip to Cuba was quite interesting. We're now moving into. I'm racing at the same time, so I've got to sort of juggle my motor racing and my trips to Cuba.
Yeah.
Restorations and various other things that I was getting up to. The chap I was dealing with, who was obviously on the export sales side of things, out there, he ran. He was a very nice man. He used to take me out to lunch, at Lobster. And I saw on his desk, to my utter horror, several magazines as my advertisements. Not for £100, but for £10,000 sort of thing. And he said, "You're making good money out of me, Mr. Crabbe." I said, "What else do you do here?" I said, "You make cigars, don't you?" "Yes," he said. "Why don't we do a deal on cigars?" Well, the end of that conversation was 10,000 cigars.
But successfully diverted away from what you would do.
Never mentioned again. And I became everybody's best friend when I came back to England. I was the man with the cigars. And I was going to set up a company, but it never actually came to fruition for various reasons I will tell you about. It was Captain Crabbe Cigars. Where the captain came from, I'm not quite sure, but it seemed to rhyme quite well.
It sounds authentic.
It did. I rather agree with you. And I was going to a great friend of mine who was at school with me, who was number one in Scotland at a drink shop there. I've forgotten what it's called, the drink shop. He was there and he got fired. I think he didn't get fired because he was much too good for that. I think they were overstaffed and laid him off, and he was a much too nice a man. He was at Ampleforth with me, which, as you know, is a church school, and he got into terrible trouble for he became a priest, and then he got into terrible trouble for hitting a novice over the head with a candlestick, and so he had to leave the church, and he was available. Yeah, I thought, and I said, Henry, why don't you come and run this company for me? And we laughed, and he talked and talked and talked. And he never came back to me. Meanwhile, he got himself killed. Oh, dear. He got run over, or there was a head-on crash somewhere. So that was one, if you like, Captain Crabbe's cigars was still born. But the profit in those cigars was even more than the motor cars.
Was it?
I mean, a decent cigar in Cuba costing £1 in Cuba, you'd buy it for 15 over here.
Wow.
The markup was simply bliss.
Did you end up giving them all away in the end?
I gave them all away. Kept a box myself and my mates, and that was about it.
Colin, so while you were buying and selling these cars, at the same time, you were actually racing cars as well, weren't you?
I was competing in them where possible.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into racing?
Well, I got into racing, I suppose, going back to my student days in Edinburgh, where I drove a rather nasty TR3 at Charter Hall, which is the Scottish circuit. Actually, to motor racing, I wasn't particularly interested in other people motor racing. But as it turned out, I was quite good at running people and sort of running a team, which is what I did eventually. While I was in Kenya, I got 2 telephone messages, or wire messages, or whatever they were in those days. One told me that my friend, Jim Clark, had been killed at Hockenheim, and the other was that a GP Mercedes, a Grand Prix Mercedes, a 6-litre one, had been found in East Germany, which again was no-go territory. And was I interested? You bet your life I was interested. So I got on the first available flight. So it's only I could do via Ethiopia.
Via Ethiopia?
I went to Ethiopia and got to Eritrea, that's the next stop, where I found 3 bloody good cars. All countries I didn't expect to find anything. I found a Ferrari racing car, and I found a pre-war Alfa and a pre-war Maserati. The Ferrari and the Maserati looked brand new. 1956, 1936. Extraordinary, I found them. Then, quite recently, I found a picture of all these cars in a race in Asmara.
Oh, wow. So they're still around?
Well, they are now, they're sold.
Yeah.
So I bought all these cars, but brought them back. And then I went to Berlin, had long talk discussions with I had a German who was my agent in Germany, and he'd actually tipped me off about this Mercedes. So, Checkpoint Charlie, here we come.
Oh, yeah.
So slightly nervously I went through Checkpoint Charlie, which was a very simple operation, really.
Yeah.
And they put mirrors under your car so you weren't. And there was a Mercedes, and there was its engine sitting beside it. So I bought the car, sold it to a nameless friend of mine, or sold a share to a nameless friend of mine for £10,000. Well, you may have noticed the price had gone up a bit. And he thought he'd overpaid for it and got out of it. Well, I think today...
So you'd agreed the sale of it, and he pulled out?
He pulled out.
Yeah.
I didn't care, particularly, because I got so excited with this Mercedes, which I rebuilt here in Baston.
Yeah.
And famous pictures of me driving up the Fen Road here.
I think you've got one or two of those in the book, haven't you, Colin?
Yeah, on trade plates.
Yeah.
And the first 2 times nothing happened. It gave out a dull fart. And so we had to turn around and come back again. Had another go. It gave out a double fart. And I thought, how are we going to get this bloody thing going? And the next time we retimed it, we found we had a camshaft in the wrong position. And I got a serious fright because it got 500 horsepower there.
Wow.
I just avoided the van.
That must have been scary.
I was so excited, I can't tell you. And of course, the night when we had to run it in, so I drove it on all the back roads around here on trade plates, highly illegally. And racing, I'd entered the Premier vintage race. Well, as I'd never driven the car before, the car had never been driven in a race before, I was a bit nervous and a bit brave. So I took it to Alton Park, and I entered the Seaman Trophy race, which I won very easily. I think this car was about 50% faster than anything else. Wonderful road holding, wonderful brakes. You couldn't fault it.
Colin, while we're talking, I've just been looking up at a magnificent picture of a racing car, or it's a painting, shall I say? And it looks as though it's ever so good.
In the pouring rain.
Yeah, and you can see the rain there, and that's you driving, is it, Colin?
I am.
Yeah.
I mean, one wet day, you also probably can't tell, but the diameter of the rear wheels are 25-inch.
And that's the car we've just been referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, sorry, could you repeat what that car was?
It's a W125 Mercedes.
Yeah.
It was, they went through a series of producing racing cars after 1935. And the first time they got it right was 1937 with that car.
Yeah.
Designed by a German married to an English girl. And he was their sort of best designer ever. They were extremely reliable.
Yeah.
A sort of modified one did over 200 miles an hour on the Autobahn, timed. And it never gave me a moment. I had a moment of horror that it was going to blow up on me. And having won the race, instead of stopping and getting my trophy, I parked it. And people said, why have you parked it there? Oh, I said, it's getting a bit hot. I was terrified it was going to explode.
Yeah, with you in it.
With me in it.
Yeah.
But no.
It's a beautiful looking car, Colin.
Never missed a beat in all the years I had it.
It's a beautiful looking car.
I was never beaten.
No.
It beat Ferraris. It beat much later cars. And I sold it to, ironically, the man who was going to come in with me originally and buy it. And all I can say is it sold for an enormous sum of money.
Mm. So was that your favourite car to race?
That
Colin?
was the all-time favourite car to race. I didn't race very much. I'd sold it. I only raced it for 3 years. Then I sold it. And then the next owner very nearly totaled it. He didn't have a crash. He went, do you know Monte Carlo?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Do you know the tunnel?
Yeah.
He spun it in the tunnel.
How did he manage that?
Well, by being a silly sod. But he just gave it too much pet willy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it has never been crashed. It then went to Japan. That's sort of very sad. To come back here, it was bought by Bernie Eccleston, who, as you know, was a sort of head man in Formula One.
Yeah.
And he sold it to the chap who's got it at the moment, who's a German. I believe very, very nice. He's never contacted me.
So it's gone back to Germany.
Back in Germany.
It's quite amazing, Colin, how you remember the detail of these cars, but not only that, you actually know now where they are. After all, they must really leave an impression with you.
Well, I think there's certain cars do leave an impression on me.
Yeah.
But it's a funny old world. I got a telephone call last week from a Czech who wanted to come and see me. So I said, well, you can come and see me if you want. Bring some beer, I said. So these two Czechs arrived. I think with a mammoth collection of cars. And they gave me a dozen bottles of best Pilsner. And he'd bought one of the cars I'd bought originally in North Africa, in Asmara.
Wow.
He wanted, I think, proof that I'd been the owner.
Yes. Oh, right.
Very nice couple.
Yeah.
I had two Mercedes. I found one Mercedes in California, which had no engine. But I bought it because all the bits fitted this. The brake drums.
Oh, right.
Would fit to go straight on. So all the bits I was missing came off this second chassis and went straight onto that. And the second chassis I sold quite a lot of money because prices gone edged up a bit.
In this first episode, we're going to have more episodes with Colin. We've covered some of Colin's career in the buying and selling of antique automobiles, which is something obviously very specialist. And in the next episode, we shall carry on with that, but we'll also be talking a bit more about Colin's racing career. So, Colin, until next time, it's been great talking to you. And we'll put this episode out and then we'll follow on with another one. So thanks ever so much for coming on the show.
It's been an enormous pleasure, and thank you very much for taking the time and bother to come and see me.
Well, it's great, and I'm looking forward to next time. Thanks so much, Colin.
So am I.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So it's good to be back talking with you again, Colin. One thing we didn't discuss last time was your racing career. Could you just tell us a little about your racing, and particularly the Formula One team that you got together?
It was 60 years ago, which is rather terrifying too. I think there were four of us who thought it'd be quite fun to get involved in Formula One. Two of us were already involved in historic racing. And we thought, why not? If Alexander Hesketh could do it, I can do it. And they were all quite wealthy, and they put their fingers in their pockets and they produced the odd pound note. And if I tell you that a brand new Cosworth engine, which then was, I suppose, 3 years old, we're talking about 1969, a brand new unit was £7,000. A unit today is $500,000. It's just ridiculous. We decided the first race we'd enter was Monaco, but we needed a car. So I looked up the motorsport, or was it maybe perhaps autosport that week, I suppose, and there, looking at me, was a Cooper Maserati. Just about in legal, it was a 3-litre car.
Yeah.
And we hadn't gone down to 1.5-litre formula yet. And this thing had 3 engines, it had 10 wheels. I've never seen piles of spares like you've never seen. And it was £3,000. It's really not a lot of money when you saw what we got. And I was, of course, a Maserati lunatic, having had older Maseratis. And this was the most beautifully made car. The whole thing from end to end. Just by looking at it, it ought to have won a Grand Prix, but of course it was out of date and other excuses, so on and so forth. Anyway, we bought the thing, and I was waiting from midsummer, from sort of 4:30 onwards in the morning for this thing to arrive, which it duly did. And I got very excited. It got unloaded from the lorry, and the lorry pushed off, and I waved goodbye to it, and I leapt into the car. Well, that was a severe error. I couldn't leap out of it again. And I was stuck absolutely, utterly and completely. And I had to wait for the village to wake up to pull me out.
So how long were you in the car for, Colin?
An hour. Sitting just outside this garage.
Yeah.
So that really put paid to my ideas of actually driving a Formula One car in a Formula One race. I did, in fact, later on, I bought 2 or 3 BRM chassis. They had engines which went and did other things. I never got the engines, but I got the chassis. And I built a Formula 5000 car out of one of these chassis. And I drove that, but it was no fun. You know, we put a Ford V8 engine in the back of this thing. It never went properly.
What, you mean it didn't go particularly fast?
It wasn't fast. It handled quite well.
Yeah.
But I was too big for it even then. So I couldn't get my feet on the pedals. It was the usual sort of drama. I had a go at Silverstone once on a BRDC open day in a sort of mock-up Formula One car which they have, which they could lengthen or widen or whatever. So I had it widened and lengthened and got in it. And, that was fun.
Yeah.
But I did learn later, never, ever, ever ask a professional driver to drive you, because it's a joke. Because he'll think he's very clever. And he'll either do what Wizzo Williams did with me. He took me out in one of the learner, were they Ford Escorts? I can't remember what they were, but they were something like that. And he rolled the thing at Woodcote with me in it.
Wow.
And apart from I got that awful fright, I've never ever had anybody drive me in any form of sports car ever again. Mm. So with our lovely Cooper, the thing was then to get somebody to drive it. So my old friend Neil Corner was summoned. He of fame in historic cars, but he was a very wealthy chap. He could afford it, and I couldn't. And I said, would you like to drive this thing on a if you break it, you fix it.
That was the deal.
That's very important. And see if you like it. So we went to Madrid, where there was what I would call a secondary Formula One race. There was a mixture of Formula One and Formula 2, Formula A, Formula 5000, Formula 2, you name it. It was all there. Big grid of about 30 cars. And he hopped in the car and he came 6th.
That's pretty good.
He'd never driven the thing before, and he'd never driven a Formula One car before. It wasn't bad. Mm. Okay, the car was a bit out of date.
So how many cars would have taken part in that race?
I think about 20, I think.
So coming 6th first time is pretty good.
So, I mean, it was...
It exceeded your expectations?
Absolutely. I mean, he did very, very well. And he didn't cost me anything either, which was better yet. So anyway, having sort of decided the car actually went, the next thing was to try and get more power out of it. So I sidled up to BRM, and they had an absolutely marvellous engine man who came from Vanmore. And he worked on the thing for a couple of months, and we got about another 30 horsepower out of the engine. So while we weren't getting the power we should have had, if we'd had a modern car, but when we went motor racing...
Can I just interrupt you a second, Colin? For those people who don't know an awful lot about horsepower, an extra 30 horsepower, does that mean that the acceleration improves dramatically? Or
I think everything improves dramatically,
yeah.
As long as you don't blow it up.
Yeah.
But the Cooper produced about 400. The 400, let's say, 7,000 RPM. The most wonderful noise. It was called the V12. Cosworth, a V8, produced 460, 480, depending on which series it was. So whatever happened, we were down on power, but it was enough fun to amuse us. Anyway, at that stage, I thought we might as well, as I couldn't get in the thing. Neil had done his run, so I rang up my old mate from previous times, Vic Elford, who I, of course, got to know very well in the sports car days of driving big sports cars. And he said he'd love to drive the car. And he said he'd won the Monte Carlo rally on 2 occasions, and he thought he'd love to have a go in a Formula One car at Monaco. It sort of filled his book. So there we were. We had the team. I'll never forget this. And we went to Monaco. It was the Formula One car on a trailer, 4-wheel trailer, being pulled behind the company Yellow Transit. It was a pretty seedy-looking lot we were. And accommodation was impossible. So I got accommodation through some pal of mine, which consists of an incredibly grand sort of middle of the 19th century house in the middle of Monaco. So I was very happy. We were content.
Yeah.
And my team of mechanics. My father, he didn't know the first thing about mechanicking, but he got a ticket. Somebody called Andy Clive, who was a merchant banker in London. He knew nothing about cars, but he was a pal of mine. And Cyril Atkins, who had been head mechanic at BRM's, and another. So we were not quite as well equipped. Is when you go and look out at a modern current Formula One race, there are about 30 mechanics per car.
And how did the other teams view you guys coming in?
Oh, I thought it was a bit of a joke, really. And we were a bit of a joke, but we've got less and less of a joke as the season went on.
I read somewhere that you were one of the last privateers in Formula One.
I think I was the last privateer in Formula One. I don't think only one of the last. The great privateer of all, of course, Jody just pulled out, which was Rob Walker. So we had Rob Walker. He pulled out, and therefore it was really only me left in.
Yeah. It's interesting that you originally wanted to actually race the cars yourself, but obviously because of your stature, somebody else had. How did you feel when you weren't actually doing the racing?
I was extremely upset, really, because I hadn't worked the fact out I was too big to drive a Formula One car. I'd been statistics, 6'6", guards measurement, 17.5 stone. That's the size of 2 Formula One drivers now. It was just a no-go. It was just something that was never going to happen. And I did miss my racing hugely when driving myself. Because I'd driven cars for years. I'd always had very fast cars. I'd done rallies, I'd done this, that, and the other, and I reckon I knew how to drive.
Yeah.
So does everybody in Formula One. Except for a few people like a Dame, but I won't.
What does it feel like driving a racing car?
Oh, danger never worried me.
Did it not?
No, danger I couldn't care less about. I had 2 instances in the GT40, which in fact we were very successful in our GT40 actually. He came a 5th and 6th, and those sort of results we were getting. We came 7th in the 12-hour race at Reims. It was very successful.
Yeah.
But it was big enough. And I remember we took the car, the first time out we took it to South Africa. There was a Springbok series. And I must admit, as it was all paid for, our holiday in South Africa seemed a frightfully good idea. We stayed for 3 months. And we were looked after completely for 3 months. And it was enormous amount of fun. I was sort of midfield. We were a sort of mixture of cars. I mean, there were very fast Porsches driven by a chap who's just died, actually, called Mike Diudi, a very, very good driver, a New Zealander. We had this GT40, which I bought second hand, but I mean, it was only a year old. It only just come out that the previous year. And the first thing we had to do, of course, I was far too big for it, like hard, too big for everything, sort of thing. But this time I could sit in it, but my head went through the roof.
Really?
So we took it down to Ford Advanced Vehicles at Slough, who built the cars, and they built a thing like a pyramid on top of the
so
door.
You had an extended roof.
Yes.
So you could fit in it.
Yeah, it was known as my brain dome. And only one other person had a brain dome. That was Dan Gurney. Well, he was about nearly.
Would that not slow the car down a bit?
No.
Not really.
Oh, yeah. Aerodynamic? No.
Just yeah.
No. We had terrific fun there. That was when I saw my late and very good friend Jackie's Jimmy Clark driving a Model T Ford into a swimming pool.
Is that right?
Not popular.
He drove?
We were at a party.
Oh, okay.
He thought he'd stir it up. He was full of witticisms. The people who owned the swimming pool were extremely pissed off, as you can imagine. Because I know what swimming pools are like to clean. And this was... Then of course, classic. I find a Grand Prix Maserati from 1934. Then I find another one from 1938. So I'm in seventh heaven. I buy
so
one.
So Maserati was your favourite car, was it?
Well, Maserati was my favourite car. I suppose the car that I won the most races in, which was a 3-litre birdcage, which was a car built in 1967.
Yeah.
And I was the only man, I think, who had the guts to ring up Maserati and talk to Mr. Maserati, or Alfieri. He said, "Good afternoon." I said, my name's Colin Crabbe." "Yes." "I'd like to buy an old Maserati. You got any?" "Yes. What do you want?" And I came back with this absolutely brand new Maserati, 700 quid.
Really? Wow. And that was the original Mr. Maserati, wasn't it?
Oh God, yeah. No. I mean, it was Maserati brothers. He was certainly a sort of senior man in the business.
Yeah.
And Alfieri, I think it was, I spoke to him at the time. But of course, then I went and raced historic races throughout the 60s.
Well, I was reading in your book about the London to Brighton.
Oh, that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like, I think I'm the only man who's quite happy to drive a 200 mile an hour GT40 or a 19 mile an hour Delahaye.
A big range of speeds there, Colin.
I got the most enormous pleasure out of driving something that was hugely complicated. And these Brighton cars I wanted were not the ones that did 60 miles an hour, which some of them did. Mercedes, for example. I wanted something with belts, chains, very smelly, very slow, and looking like a carriage.
So one of the original cars that was built.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I had.
Yeah.
I bought in France, I bought an 1897 Delahaye,
Wow.
which had all those attributes. It was a good day of the following wind, you get 25 out of it, I suppose. But its normal cruising speed is about 15 to 18. But I took it to Brighton on about 8 different times. I failed to get there once, very early on, because I put it into reverse and it went straight into a tree. The steps at the start in Hyde Park. That was unfortunate. Otherwise, the rest of the time we got down there, nay bother.
Yeah.
Great fun, jolly good car. I mean, I miss not driving now almost more my ancient cars to the modern.
Do you?
Mm.
Is that because you like the challenge of driving a very old car?
I think it's a hell of a challenge. And the older the thing is, the bigger the challenge. Cars are pretty primitive then.
And I guess all cars, cars that were made originally like that, they're all quite different in the way they worked. Whereas now they're all roughly the same, aren't they? They're very generic.
Good point. Mm. They basically all had engines that worked more or less the same way as our engines worked. 1 cylinder, 2 cylinder, 3 cylinder. I had one 3-cylinder car. And I bought a number of these cars, of course, over the years in South America, India.
Yeah.
We got a Napier out of India, which belonged to Maharaja of Jaipur, I think. No, it was great fun. So I did 24 Brighton runs.
24?
Yep.
Wow.
So you can count that to sort of 28 years.
And what about other places like Goodwood? Did you do the stuff at Goodwood?
No. I've been to Goodwood once.
Yeah.
I've been to Goodwood once as a spectator, but I never raced at Goodwood.
No.
But, having said I've never raced at Goodwood, not only have I raced at Goodwood, but I've won at Goodwood, but it's not in the records.
Oh, really? How did that happen?
Because I raced in the last ever race meeting at Goodwood. But and we were told, we senior members of the British Racing Drivers Club were told that if we had driven at Goodwood, we would get free access to the great party they have once a year in September, which we've just had.
So that was the incentive.
And when I applied, I said I raced here in 1965, which I did, and they said, well, that's tough. So I never went back.
Going back to collecting cars, how has it changed over the last 50 years?
Oh, only in one way. It's called money.
Price has gone up and up and up.
I mean, what if I would give you a sort of example? I bought a Testarossa Ferrari. All right, it was a sort of pretty shagged out old thing, and I paid $2,000 for it. But it did happen to be the car that won Le Mans in 1979. That's 69.
Yeah.
59. Let's get this right. God, back. 1959. It's worth £2.5 million now.
So even taking into account inflation, it's relatively gone up.
Relatively. It's gone up hugely.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I got it. It was complete. It would have cost me a further 1,500 quid probably to restore it to the sort of pristine way it is now.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who's interested in doing what you did in terms of going around the world collecting cars?
Find another job.
Find another job. Really, it's changed that much.
I mean, I'm asked by lots of people every year, where do I look for old cars? Well, that was the question I was asking 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And I went to the places which had old cars, which people hadn't been to. I did Russia. I did India, but there was nothing India. Somebody had already been through India. And I did America. There's cars to be found there still, but you won't get anything very good. And if something very good does turn up, these cars do turn up in auctions, but they're damnably expensive. And if you've been like me and you paid £27.10 for a nice Austin 7, I'm not going to be tempted to pay £2,500 quid for one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that the market for old cars is finished. The people, well, take Goodwood for a good example. There's about one race you could for the lesser cars, which is you will have sort of Sunbeam Talbots or Morris Minors or Minis. You can race modernish cars, but the rest of the cars there are mega money.
So,
and people, and of course, if you've bought a car as a trophy car, I would call it, in fact, you won't run it, you won't drive it.
no.
I mean, I wondered why my lovely Mercedes, which was the Grand Prix car, the one that took all the records and everything, when apart from selling it to my great friend Neil Corner, he nearly broke it up in the tunnel in Monte Carlo, but he luckily missed both ends. They spun it. I never spun it. I never had a moment's bother with that car. And I won everything I entered in it. W125. Went to Japan, it was never used. It went back to England. Bernie had it, somebody else had it over here. And then it was sold to Germany, and it has actually had a rebuild.
Yeah.
And as far as I can make out, it has been driven at 40 miles an hour. So they were very nice. They sent me a film of it actually going up the hill at Goodwood.
Yeah. One of the other aspects that I read in your book was you had a stint working Christie's.
I had a stint working at Christie's, and I did enjoy. First of all, I was paid far too much money, which was always nice. Because I mentioned the sum, which I won't repeat to you, thinking I'd be thrown out, and they said, yes, that's fine. And the fun working for them was I took sales in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and America. You know, so it was good fun, and you were always put up at the best hotels, and you didn't muck about.
No. But this
one particular trip has got.
So rather than sort of searching for cars, this was actually selling cars.
Selling other people's cars.
Yeah.
But there's one sort of quite funny example. Is I was detailed to go to Australia, and they had a woman in charge of the office in Australia, and I discovered where my hotel was. And I said, no, I'm not staying there. Oh, but it's booked for you. I said, I'm not staying there. That's full of hookers, whores, anything. I don't want to go there. It's just revolting. Oh, but the directors love it. I said, well, they can. And I said to the taxi, I said, and it was very difficult to get any accommodation at all. I said, take me to the best hotel. She took me to the Ritz-Carlton or somewhere, and extraordinary. I went in there and produced my Christie's card. No questions asked. I was put in a suite about the size of this house, with a bottle of brandy, open, waiting, with a glass on the table.
Wow.
I've never had service ever like that. No. And then I made myself fairly unpopular, because I rang the client, as opposed to the client getting hold of me. No, I got that the wrong way around. The client had to ring me at the Ritz-Carlton, as opposed to me ringing the client at Wagga Wagga. Mm. That was not popular at headquarters, but I enjoyed it.
And how long did you work at Christie's for?
3 years.
Okay, you enjoy that, obviously.
Well, I sort of enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because when I first went in, the market was hugely buoyant. It then did a U-turn and went right down. In the mid-90s, it just went right, bottomed out.
Yeah.
And I always said, well, it was because I joined it. But it just did. It's one of these things that just went down. I had a very successful sale of... First of all, directors are not allowed to sell their own cars. So I had a telephone call from an extremely nice man who was the nephew of a chap who I'd sold a car to 20 years before, which happened to be a London bus. double-decker, 1905, the only one in the world. And he had it restored here in England, or in the mid-60s, 1960s, in expense no object. It was gorgeous, with sort of advertisements saying sort of boot polish and things on the side, and Bovril is good for you, and all that sort of thing. And wonderfully complicated. I never did see it drive, but you needed some 3 people on the gear lever to pull it. Only one, so I was in America, I got a telephone call from this man, and he said, "You know the car you sold Uncle?" I said, the bus. It was always known as the bus. I said, "Yeah, I know it well. What's up?" He said, "It's mine now, and I've got to sell it. And I've got to sell it quick. I need the money. Will you give me $40,000 for it?" I said, "Yes, I will." Instant decision. It made 600 on the sale, 1,000.
Did it? Wow.
Thank you very much indeed. Mm. And it was bought. It was an extraordinary thing, actually. There were a lot of people interested in it. Of course, like so many things, it was wonderful. It came back to Europe, and is now in the National Motor Museum in Holland.
Is it? So it's still around then?
Oh yeah, very, very much so.
Is it the only one of its type?
I mean, I sold the last car I sold in auction was, in fact, my Ferrari, which I'd found in Cuba. I'd rebuilt it. It's that car up there. And I put that in an auction here, in America, I mean. And he came straight back to England. Rather bored, I'd already sent it out from England by air freight. Back it came by air freight. It's still owned by the chap who bought it. Mm. I've never been so nervous at a sale. There's quite a lot stood on it. That's the wrong word, isn't it? I relied on it rather a lot.
You wanted it to go through smoothly.
I wanted to go for a lot of money.
Mm. Yeah, I bet.
And then, of course, throughout all these years I was suffering from my accident, and I got worse and worse until I'm like this now. There's one other story that sort of comes to mind, which was when I was very young. My first book on cars is called Automobiles of the Old Automobiles. I've still got somewhere. It's a sort of little, scrubby little book, small 6x4 sort of thing. A for Albion, Z for Zulu, it was one of those. So I always remember looking at this book and seeing the most enormous Benz. Huge, lovely Benz. I said, God, I'd like that. The museum had gone. The museum was wound up in 1950. And the book still headed in as 1965 or something. Nobody knew where it had gone, so I forgot all about it. But in 2008, 20 years ago, I got a telephone call from Christie's. We've been offered this car. We don't quite know what to do with it. Would you take it on yourself? I said, yes, I would. I took it on. We drove it for about, a quarter of a mile. It was terrifying. The engine was as big as that sofa. It was 6-cylinder, 24-litre. And it went bang every telegraph pole. It was really a sort of thing, what one imagines an ancient car is. Yeah. And it had tremendous history. It was used competitively right up into the 30s. I mean, the history of it's divine. Yeah. Captured by the Germans, it had gone to a Belgian who bought it from, I suppose, Benz. It was then taken back to Germany, rebodied as a staff car for Field Marshal, I forget, I did know the name, I can't remember who it was. who was in charge of the Western Front, was up, and he was going to inspect the troops in this thing. Well, it was sold after the war for £50. It's a war, sales, and all, everything was sold there. And it was bought by somebody who could go and race at Brooklands. And it was very unsuccessful to start with, until some rather good people got it. And it lapped Brooklands to 143 miles an hour before they withdrew it. They, being Brooklands, said, this guy's going to kill himself. This car, 50 years old, or whatever it was, and it was so bloody quick. It was just, it was the most wonderful thing.
So you got hold of it?
I got hold of it.
Yeah.
Let's put it another way. Christie's couldn't work out a deal with the man for some reason. Which is why I said, would I like to have a go? So I rang the man up, and I had the car here in 48 hours.
You obviously did a good deal.
Well, I wouldn't do a deal at all. I said, I'll sell it for you. Which is what happened. And actually, somebody else sold it, and we split the profits. Wonderful, wonderful car. And that was the last amusing car that I sold.
Yeah.
With the exception of my Model T Ford, which I'd been given as a present in America, and I rebuilt it here. I was copying a 1914 World War ambulance, sort of canvas sides, instead of a cross on the side was antique automobiles, or complete automobilists, you see. And I drove. There's a Brighton run. It doesn't go from Hyde Park, but it goes from, I can't think what the park is called, in fact, but this is the next park down. It goes to Brighton for commercials only. So I drove this thing down to Brighton on 4 different occasions. Totally and utterly reliable, wonderful thing to drive. And now I know why Ford succeeded, others failed.
Yeah.
Even then, which was probably about 2007, 2008, my feet couldn't do it. And it had to go.
And have you got any of these old cars still, Colin?
No.
Do you miss them?
No.
No. One thing I did read...
I've got one old car.
Yeah. But
I've given it to my son. It's my father's BMW.
Wow.
Which he bought in 1935 at the motor show.
Oh, so he got it brand new in 1935?
Yeah.
So it's been kept in the family all that time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, isn't it? Yeah. Now, I've
driven that car across Africa.
Did you?
With
your father, or?
Oh, no, he died long before. No, I used it as a sort of fun car for doing alcoholic rallies on the continent, basically.
Alcoholic rallies?
Run by Murray Chandon, Hennessy. Good fun. There'd be about 20 of us would go off.
Interestingly, I read in your book about you organised your own rallies, latterly.
I only did it once.
Okay.
And
what made you want to organise your own rally?
Because I thought I could do it cheaper than anybody else and better, and I did. But I was only going to do it once.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the arse.
Was that the one in Ireland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very successful. Entirely by invitation. We had 20 people again. I think the whole bloody lot came, I asked. It was rather nice.
Yeah.
Ranging from Lord Bamford down to some German I'd met. And they all came. And we had a hell of a time.
And this would be for a week or so, would it?
Yeah, it must have been about a week. But the organisation...
I should imagine, yeah.
The cost of running it... I made money out of it. I mean, I didn't mean to lose money.
No.
But I'm just interested in how much it cost. And let's put it like this, it costs a hell of a lot less than other people were charging for their rallies. Which I let the other people know. I said, I know what you're charging. Oh, and I said, well, it cost you this, that. Oh, well, you don't know how you found that out, you know.
I think these were all with vintage cars.
Oh, Lord, yes. No, I was very selective. We only had vintage cars.
So, okay, you've got to...
I say vintage cars, there were people coming in Ferraris.
Yeah. So if you've got 20 people, possibly 10 cars, perhaps, what happens is some of these older cars, obviously, they're not going to run perfectly all that.
We have a breakdown car.
Right, so that all adds to the cost.
With spare tyres and
yeah.
a mechanic driving it.
Right, okay. Yeah. And did you have any breakdowns en route?
Not that I can remember.
No. That's good.
And it's rather fun. This was my own rally. My children came and drove on it.
Oh, did they? Oh, fantastic.
My daughter, what did she say with the immortal words? She was aged, I suppose, about 20. She made some particularly stupid remark, which we all keeled over about. She got lost. Yeah, I can't remember why, but she did. My son, and one daughter, and my son went with her, that's right. So it was lost in 7, which again we would buy back if the man, I think we will buy it back, because the man has said he'll sell it to us. It won't be for me, it'll be for my son, Alistair. Because it was sort of slightly custom made for me, lengthwise. And highly drivable. We had the engine really sort of put together by a Formula One man. So in fact you could override.
Did you do any of the work on the cars yourself, Colin?
Not with my own fair hand, no.
No.
I'm not a mechanic.
No.
I'm a delegator.
You got it all together.
And I say, you and you fix it. And they would.
Yeah.
I had the same mechanics for years. And I used to sort of bleed BRM that they would be underpaid or be cursed.
So these are the people just north of here, in Bourne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They ran Formula One team.
So you've got the best mechanics.
If they got pissed off, they came to me. As they did get pissed off, they came to me. First to do it was the team manager, or the chief mechanic of Vanwell, who'd gone to BRM. Unhappy with BRM, so he came to me. He came to me for years.
It's been great talking to you again, Colin. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Well, I'm a bit rusty in my stories because this all happened. It's a terrifying thought, but it happened. How long ago was that? It was 30 years ago, more, 30, 40 years ago.
No, some really, really
and
interesting
the mind isn't as good as it used to be.
Tell me about
the
it.
content is, but
there's some fascinating stories. I wish I could stay longer and do more stories with you because there's plenty there.
Oh, you'd get stuff out of me which I'd forgotten about.
I think we got one or two of those today, didn't we?
There are one or two, but there's one or two which can't be told.
No. Okay. Lovely talking to you. Bye bye.
It's a pleasure.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all